All right, let's turn back to the breaking news surrounding the embattled chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, who says he will no longer lead the investigation into Russian interference in the election. In a statement, Congressman Devin Nunes pointed to the distraction caused by the accusations of, quote, left-wing activist groups as a reason for his recusal. And in a press conference earlier, House Speaker Paul Ryan said that he supports Nunes' decision to step aside.
I think Chairman Nunes wants to make sure that this is not a distraction to a very important investigation. So he wants to go clear himself while this investigation continues on without any kinds of distractions.
Mark Leibovich is in Washington. He's a CBS News contributor and chief national correspondent for the New York Times Magazine. So, Mark, let me get your reaction to the news.
Well, I mean, it's not, I would say, entirely surprising. Look, it's another shoe to drop. I mean, first of all, if you sort of look at the big-ish picture here, which is this is entirely self-inflicted. This all stems from a tweet on March 4th by President Trump accusing President Obama of wiretapping him. And, you know, it's now an infamous tweet. It has now sort of occupied maybe 4 or 5 weeks of oxygen. It has been something that Devin Nunes, I guess, for whatever reason, decided to weigh in directly on, go to the White House, work with the White House on, and it's made the congressional side of this investigation into a bit of a joke. So, I mean, distraction is always sort of the more sanitized word people use in Washington when something has become untenable, perhaps politically unflattering. But there's no question that Devin Nunes has lost a great deal of credibility. That was not sustainable going forward. And the question is now, I mean, there's already a vacuum in the House as far as investigating this. I mean, I think in so much as there is any sort of credibility coming on investigating this from Capitol Hill, it's come from the Senate. I think Senator Burr, the Republican from North Carolina, and Senator Warner, the Democrat from Virginia, have absolutely, seemed to take the lead on this investigation. And that, I think, this is only going to push the gravity in that direction in a way that I don't think is going to be terribly favorable to the White House.
Yeah, so that's the question I wanted to ask you. Will this be enough for the House committee's investigation to regain credibility?
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, I think the credibility is lost. I think especially on this issue with wiretapping, especially given how it was disseminated by a tweet by the president, this is a losing issue for everyone involved. It's something that even Devin Nunes has run away from, or at least tried to discredit, fairly early on. So, no, I mean, I think when you sort of try to fill a clearly wounded chairman of a committee with 3 people, one of them is Trey Gowdy, who was in the middle of the Benghazi investigation. Clearly it's politicized, and I think that Adam Schiff really is the only one, the Democratic ranking member of this committee, who I think has emerged with any kind of stature intact. And again, though, I think that the onus has kind of fallen onto the Senate, and they seem to have been doing a pretty, respected job on both sides of the aisle.
And so, Mark, you've been sort of alluding to this. So is it safe to say that the Senate committee now will take the center stage here with so much controversy on the House side? And where's that investigation?
Well, I mean, it does seem to be moving fairly deliberately, but I do think that it's clear that Senator Warner and Senator Burr are working pretty closely together, that they seem to be making a pretty strong point of doing this publicly. I think the people on that committee, Senator Rubio, Senator McCain, have been fairly vocal and fairly, somewhat independent sounding, and have been really, pushing this a lot harder than a lot of Republicans on the committee on the House. So, again, I mean, I think that this has been, it's been a disaster from the House side. There's no question about that. And while this might get rid of a short-term distraction, distraction is basically a code word in D.C. for something that has become a political liability and something that people are talking about in a bad way. So I think this is an effort to try to move on from that.
Mark, I want to get your take on a couple of things in Nunes' statement. First off, he opens up by saying that, an investigation has been opened by the Office of Congressional Ethics, and he blames several left-wing activist groups. And he goes on to say that this whole thing is happening just as the American people are beginning to learn the truth about improper unmasking of identities of U.S. citizens and other abuses of power. But thus far, we haven't seen any proof of that, have we?
Well, no. I mean, there have been, I mean, there's some, I guess they're trying to conflate the Susan Rice story over the last few days with this. But the fact is, the left-wing groups are not running the House of Representatives. This is a Republican-controlled body right now, and Devin Nunes, resigned or stepped down on his own. So, I mean, if it's that easy for quote-unquote left-wing groups to, get rid of Republicans in important ranking positions, I'm sure everyone would step down. So I don't think that really passes the smell test. Again, I think that's a separate issue from whether the White House, whether President Trump, whether Sean Spicer, whoever, wants to try to prove that this wiretapping went on, that surveillance went on, that whatever Susan Rice did is, vindicates the president's March 4th tweet. It's another conversation entirely. But clearly, this is a maneuver in terms of, that responds to a very wounded political figure on the Hill.
Why include then several left-wing activist groups? I mean, it's the first thing in his statement.
Why include it? It's sort of an easy note. I mean, look, the telltale signs of people in Washington in a crisis reacting this way is, one, the word distraction. They always use that. Two, blaming, reflexively the other side. I mean, I'm pretty sure at some point the media will get blamed by Devin Nunes also. I mean, again, this is right out of a playbook. It's not, it's especially Republican in this case. So, I mean, it's very much, politically comfortable for Republicans to do this, just as it probably would be if the situation were reversed and there were a Democrat, stepping down from a panel like this. He would blame some kind of right-wing hit job. It's the way these things go. It's a fairly reflexive response, and we've seen the movie before.
Indeed. Mark Leibovich from the New York Times.
Not to step on our breaking news or anything.
I know.
Yes.
Wah, wah.
We don't have one of those. We don't have one of those tabs.
That's good.
Mark.
No. Urgency. You can feel it in the air.
Right.
Thank you so much, Mark. Mark Leibovich from the New York Times Magazine.
Thanks
We
for
really
having me.
appreciate your time.